In this day and age, we expect our gadgets to do everything. Your phone is a calculator, a flashlight, a camera, a movie theater, a gaming console, a babysitter, a source of crushing existential dread. Whatever you need. It's like every new thing is trying to be the ultimate all-in-one Wonderslab. And that brings us to the MagicX Zero 40, a device that does not do everything. In fact, it does two things. Just two things. Oh wait, no, I was wrong. It does three things. You know, not every handheld has to be normal. I know that might sound strange to hear coming from me, considering how normal I am, but it's true. We have enough normal doodads, and actually, I think we're living in the golden age of weird handhelds. Like, companies aren't just trying to copy the Game Boy and Switch anymore. We've got square screen doodads, all sorts of flippy doodads, sliders, dual screens, crank handles, whatever this is. Someone out there is probably trying to make a handheld shaped like a chicken nugget. Oh wait, they already did that? See, this is what I'm talking about. Because despite what the HR department at my old job wrote on the incident report, weird is good. The MagicX Zero 40 is weird. It's a vertical handheld, tall screen. And that's kind of a problem because you know what most retro games aren't? Vertical. So obviously, when you play those games on this thing, they get squished into a tiny little postage stamp in this tall tower of sadness. It's not unplayable, but it's definitely strange, which we'll talk about. And at first glance, you might be thinking, like, who was this screen shape for? Psychopaths who like playing PSP like this? But then you realize, because I told you, that there are two very specific things that this device does shockingly well. Better than almost any other device out there. Nintendo DS and vertical arcade games. And those things are actually pretty great, as you'll see. And there's actually a few other neat, sneaky things that you can do on here with that vertical screen, as I'll show you. Before we get into that, I need to mention that this device was provided to me by Lit NXT. They sent this to me to show you, and you can buy it from them if you want one. There's a link in the thingy below. This bad girl is rocking the all-winner A133P chipset. 2 GB of RAM, which is pretty much essential for an Android device. Speaking of which, we're running a heavily modified version of Android 10. The screen is a 4-inch IPS display with a resolution of 480 by 800, and we also get some sort of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.2, and a 4300 mAh battery. On the front, we have that tall, weird vertical display, and over here is a multi-functionable menu button, and a D-pad, and a thumbstick, and over here we have face buttons, and start and select, and dual front-facing speakers. On the left is volume up and down, on the right is a TF card hole for the system card, and a second TF card hole for the games card, and a power button. Up top, we have bumpers and triggers, and a headphone hole, and a USB-C hole for OTG connection, and another USB-C hole for charging. And around back, hang on a second, who put this there? I'm sorry, I had no idea this was here. I'll get to the bottom of whoever is behind these shenanigans. Make my words. And the controls are good. The D-pad feels solid, no issues with false diagonals or mushiness. It feels great with nice clean inputs. The face buttons are membrane style with a nice firm press, and they're quiet. And the bumpers and triggers are also membrane, and they feel really nice, and they are also quiet and stealthy. This might actually be one of the quietest handhelds I've ever used. That's great if you want to play in bed and don't want to wake your future ex-wife. And the stick is great. I love the way MagicX does their sticks. They use these comfy concave caps on there, and it has nice smooth motion and solid input quality. Not perfect. There's a little bit of cardinal snapping, as you can see, but for a cheap handheld, it's above average quality. And it's a Hall stick. Also, the stick is recessed nicely so it doesn't stick out all willy-nilly. Keeps the device feeling nice and flush and neat. Actually, since all the controls are flush and the whole thing is light and rounded, it's actually pretty darn pocketable. Despite the first impressions, it really is an easy kind of shape to live with. Speaking of which, as you can see, the shape of this thing is weird. It feels like it was generated by an AI that was trained on images of Nintendo DS's and soap dispensers. It feels sort of random with these humps on the top and bottom, but when you get it in your hands, those make sense. Now, I'm not going to say that it's the most comfortable handheld ever. It's a little on the condensed side and a little bit cramped, but considering the bizarre vertical form factor they're working with, I think they actually did a pretty decent job. I can totally play this thing and have a great time, especially when I'm playing DS games, either by smushing the screen with my thumb like a caveman, or by using a stylus like a sophisticated gentleman. And on the topic of DS, let's do some comparisons. This is my DS Lite, and you can see the size difference here. The DS Lite is overall bigger and the screen is bigger. And here it is compared to the 2DS Slab model. This is a pretty fitting comparison, I think, because the shape of these things kind of both going for the same thing. The Zero 40 is kind of like a little mini version of the 2DS. Like the 2DS had a baby with a cell phone. The screen itself is decent. It's a 480 by 800 resolution, which gives you a good pixel density, so everything looks nice and crispy. It's not pixel perfect for DS. The DS had a resolution of 256 by 192 per screen, so 2x would be 512 pixels wide. This is 480. It's fine. It's fractional scaling technically, but the image still looks sharp. No blurriness or fuzziness, especially since the screen is smaller like this. And it looks a lot better here than on a real DS or even the 2DS. It's smaller, but it's a lot crisper. The DS's screen was fine when it came out a million years ago, but compared to a modern LCD, it's not even close. Oh, and by the way, DS and Vertical Arcade games both had this custom artwork kind of bezel for the screen, and I didn't like it very much, so I made my own. For Vertical Arcade games, I made a little pixel art style arcade stick, and for DS, I made a fake pixel DS Lite thing for the middle part there. And I even did one for Game Boy, which also looks decent here. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can download them and the install instructions. They're on my Patreon page, but it's a public post, so you don't need to sign up or anything. Unless, of course, you wanted to support me and help me make better videos. That sure would be cool of you. No pressure though. But also, yes, pressure. Now, Vertical Arcade games are the other big thing that you're buying this for, and those scale basically perfectly. Most of those old arcade games ran at 240 by 320, so with this screen at 480 by 800, you're gonna get clean 2x integer scaling in most cases. Other systems are kind of a mess. I'll get into that later, but yeah, for anything 4x3, it's just goofy. The image is gonna be pretty darn small. The games will be about the same size here as they are on the 2.8-inch screen devices like the Zazbitty. And 3.5-inch screen devices look huge compared to the Zero 40 for horizontal stuff. One last thing, the screen is a bit dim. Not terrible, just not outdoor sunny day material. Indoors it's fine, and it gets nice and dark for late night under the blanket gaming. For when you're up playing DS past your bedtime just like back in the day, even though you're a grown-up now. Oh, the nostalgia. And the sound is pretty good. Stereo sound, which is always going to be better than a mono speaker. For a cheap doodad, but yeah, it's about average, I think. This thing runs Android 10, but they've pre-installed their own launcher, the Dawn launcher. You still get your standard Android settings under the hood, but the launcher is where you're going to spend most of your time. Dawn is basically a fork of Daigisho. If you like Daigisho, you're going to feel right at home here. If you're like me and you don't care for it, well, you'll still be fine. It's fine. It works. You tab through systems with the bumpers, switch categories with the triggers, and you can launch Android apps from here too. No Play Store though, so you're going to need to sideload stuff. It does come with Firefox, so you can hop online and do whatever it is that people do with Firefox. You can browse your games and launch your games. DS games run through the standalone Drastic emulator, and everything else runs through RetroArch. Once you're in a game, there's a menu button that you can press to bring up the options. In RetroArch, that opens the quick menu. RetroArch is pre-configured with decent defaults, and you can tweak it to your heart's contentment. I got the 128GB version from Lit NXT, and that came with a Kioxia card. That's a good brand of card, and the games list is actually pretty darn good. There's around 1,400 DS games, all with artwork scraped and everything ready to rock. And there's a dedicated area for TATE mode vertical shooters, over 500 of them, plus other arcade stuff in separate sections. And of course, you get the usual retro stuff: NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Genesis, TurboGrafx 16, all that dusty goodness. And there's even some heavier stuff on here. About 364 games, 25 PSP games, 28 PS1 games, some Saturn, a bit of Dreamcast. It's not an ideal device for those systems, but if you're feeling spicy and experimental, then they're there. Also, since it's Android, you can change the front end if you want to. I installed ESDE and it actually handled the vertical layout just fine. I even used the TechDweeb theme and that worked more or less totally fine. ESDE now supports shortcuts to Android apps too, so if you want to use it as your main launcher, you can. Let's get into the gaming at long last, because that's really what makes this device interesting. This is the first handheld that actually feels like it was made for DS emulation. The A133P chip inside is strong enough to handle lots of stuff, but most importantly, it runs DS flawlessly. You can upscale games to 2x native resolution with no problem, even the harder to run games. You get tons of headroom. Everything runs smooth as butter flavored polygons. DS emulation on other handhelds is always kind of hit or miss because 2 screens and a stylus is hard to recreate. Most devices can play some stuff fine on one screen and do the screen swap thing, but a lot of DS games just don't work well unless you get both screens and the touchscreen working together. The 040 tackles that problem directly, and it freaking nails it. I've had a great time playing DS games on here. Basically everything I tried, I had a ton of fun with. Games that don't use the touchscreen are good to go, and because you get both screens at once, games that actually use the dual screen layout feel right for once. It's such a better experience than trying to squash 2 screens into a single display on almost any other handheld. For touchscreen heavy games, you've got 2 options. You can use your finger, which works fine for lots of games. I played Metroid Prime Hunters using my thumb as the stylus, and it worked great. This is the first time I've played that game on a handheld and actually felt like it was good. And for more precise games, you're going to want a stylus. The DS used a resistive screen, so original DS styluses don't work here. You'll need a capacitive stylus. Your finger is fine for casual touchscreen stuff, but for more fine control in puzzle games or anything requiring precision, it's way better with a stylus. I used a regular cheap tablet stylus that I got on Amazon, and I had no trouble. It took me a few minutes to get used to the size difference, but once I adjusted, I was flinging Meteos blocks back into space, just like the good old days. Vertical shooters are the other big winner here. TATE mode. These games feel awesome on this device. You can play with the D-pad or the stick, and I actually prefer the stick because it feels more like using an arcade stick, which makes sense considering these are arcade games. Now, the screen isn't huge, even for vertical games, but it's a great form factor for them. These games are bigger here than on most handhelds unless you physically rotate the device, and the games look fantastic. The pixel density here makes them super sharp, and the colors are vibrant, and the whole thing just feels like it was made for shoot-them-up fans. I love that they pre-organized the TATE shooters into their own folder. There's over 500 of them, all pre-configured and ready to rock. Everything else on here is kind of a mixed bag. Stuff like NES or Super Nintendo works. It's pretty good, especially if you set the scaling to 8x7 instead of 4x3. But the screen is so tiny and skinny that those games look pretty darn small. 4x3 stuff is about the same size here as it is on a 2.8-inch screen device like the Zazbiddy, which costs less and is a lot more practical and portable. And GBA and PSP are even weirder. You can rotate the device and rebind the controls to make it work, but then you're just stacking weird on weird, and eventually you hit maximum weird. It's too much weird, even for me. Square games, though, are better. Game Boy and Game Boy Color actually look really good on here, and they're big enough and they feel pretty natural on this display. And if you use my custom overlay, it even looks like a Game Boy, which is scientifically proven to increase your coolness by 6%. I had a really good time playing Game Boy games while filming for this video, so you can totally do it. And then there's Pico 8. Native Android Pico 8 isn't really a thing, but if you run it through RetroArch, most games will work fine. Not perfect, but it's decent enough if you're into Pico 8 games and want to give some of them a go. One more oddball thing you can do is Java phone games. These aren't supported through RetroArch, so you're going to need an app called J2ME Loader, and that seemed to work. I got one game going, but then I realized I'd need to figure out the controls and rebind them, so I just got far enough to confirm that yes, you can do it. It's doable, and you can try this if you want to tinker. And yeah, that's it. That's what this thing does. That's what it's for, and maybe you want that stuff, and if you do, then great. You should get this. And if you don't want that stuff, if you want more different stuff, then you shouldn't. Ain't no one gonna try to stop you. Certainly not me. And you wouldn't listen to me anyways. For example, if I tell you to click the thumbs up button, you're not gonna click it. You don't have the guts to click it, do ya? Just like how you don't have the guts to watch another one of my videos after this one. And there's no way you're gonna prove me wrong.